Well, we start with the ever-increasing crisis of COVID in football. In just the last few minutes, the Premier League have announced a further 4 games for the weekend have been postponed due to the COVID outbreak. And it doesn't stop there, because even the games that are going ahead tonight are affected. And of course, Leicester against Tottenham has already fallen foul for this evening's fixtures. More on all of those stories to come. Kaveh Solokol is back on set with me. Kaveh, this is a rapidly developing story. What can you tell us?
Well, look, let's start with this evening first. Liverpool have just announced that 3 of their players have given suspected positive test results and will miss the game this evening against Newcastle. Those 3 players are Fabinho, Curtis Jones and also Virgil van Dijk. Liverpool say they have given suspected positive tests. They have gone into isolation. Obviously, they will not be involved in the game against Newcastle this evening. So that is Liverpool. Now, looking ahead to this weekend in the Premier League fixture list, we were expecting there to be 10 games this weekend on Saturday and Sunday. As things stand, there will only be 5 games. 5 games have now been postponed. Just in the last few minutes, the Premier League saying that Southampton versus Brentford, that was supposed to kick off on Saturday at 3 p.m. That has now been postponed. And according to the Premier League, that is because of an ongoing COVID-19 outbreak at Brentford, which means their training ground is closed, which means they cannot prepare properly for that game. Southampton, Brentford off. Also on Saturday, Watford versus Crystal Palace, Saturday 3 p.m. kickoff. That game is off as well. The Premier League say that that is because there's a continuing COVID outbreak at Watford, and Watford do not have enough players to fulfil the fixture. West Ham versus Norwich, again, Saturday 3 p.m. kickoff. That game is postponed, and that is because Norwich have insufficient players to fulfil the fixture due to COVID, injuries and other illnesses. And also on Saturday, a game is off. No, sorry, not Saturday. On Sunday, this was a 12 p.m. kickoff, Everton versus Leicester City. And this is off because Leicester have a COVID outbreak within their squad and they do not have enough players to fulfil the fixture. So as things stand, there are only going to be 5 Premier League games this weekend. 2 of them are on Saturday, Aston Villa versus Burnley, and also Leeds United versus Arsenal, which is the 5:30 kickoff. And then on Sunday, there were supposed to be 4 games. At the moment, there are only going to be 3. Wolves versus Chelsea at 2, Newcastle versus Manchester City at 2:15, and also Spurs versus Liverpool at 4:30. The Premier League also saying that they apologise for the disruption caused. All other matches due to be played this weekend as things stand are going to proceed. But as we've seen, it is a very fluid situation.
Well, I mean, we had Manchester United versus Brighton already postponed, so that was the one, obviously, that came earlier today. So first one went. Now in the last 10 minutes, I'm going to say, 4 more. That's 5. So that's half the match day gone. Surely now, Kaveh, really, there is significant question marks over the whole match day, as we call it, in the Premier League, and really that the whole thing could be called off. Isn't that a grave danger at this point?
I mean, you know, I can't speculate about that. All we can go on is the facts and what the Premier League are telling us. And the Premier League is sticking to their rules. If a club gets in touch with them and says, look, we've got a problem, we've got an outbreak, this is how many players have tested positive, we don't have enough players to fulfil the fixture, or our training ground is closed so we cannot prepare for the game, then the Premier League look at things on a case-by-case basis and make that decision. I think the Premier League would say, for instance, off the top of my head, if there are no problems at Aston Villa and there are no problems at Burnley, then why should that game on Saturday be suspended? That's what the Premier League are doing. They're looking at it on a game-by-game basis. I think the other issue is, after these games, there are no more games until Boxing Day, so a week on Sunday. So if you're being an optimist, if you are looking at the glass half full, you're hoping that, look, these games are going to be cancelled. These players are going to go into isolation. Hopefully the clubs will get over these outbreaks, their training grounds will be disinfected, and then the Christmas games could go ahead as planned.
Well, I suppose that depends how far into the isolation you are, I suppose, compared to when you first had symptoms and then the 10-day isolation. Because right now, what are we now? The 16th of December. So add 10 days to that. That's Boxing Day, isn't it? So again, look, I know you don't want to speculate, and I'm not going to put you in that position, Kave, but surely Boxing Day has got to be now an area of concern. One of the most famed fixtures, or day of fixtures in the calendar that fans look forward to. That has to be a little bit under threat. And again, I take your point, every game that is played tonight is one game that is not then added to a backlog, is it? And I think that must be the thing that the Premier League want to avoid.
But it is. But I think as far as the Premier League are concerned, they're sticking to their protocols. If clubs are not getting in touch with them and saying, we have a problem, then they're not going to start cancelling fixtures. They will cancel fixtures, postpone fixtures, I should say, not cancel them, if there is a problem and if people's safety is going to be affected. But as things stand, I know it's a fluid situation, but there are still 5 Premier League games on this weekend. Obviously, that could change. But the Premier League saying, as things stand, the plan is for those games to proceed as planned.
Remember that before we had the Manchester United versus Brighton postponement, we already had Thomas Frank essentially calling for a circuit breaker. And we've had Brendan Rodgers, when the game wasn't postponed against Tottenham, which it now has been, saying, well, we need to question the integrity of the competition right now. Surely, off the back of this, those sorts of comments and calls are only going to grow, aren't they? And I guess the Premier League stance on, well, if there's nothing wrong, play the game, will be challenged, surely.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful not to talk ourselves into a situation where football is suspended. Nobody wants football to be suspended again. People want to have something to look forward to go to games, to watch games on television. Clubs themselves, the people who own and run clubs and the players, they're desperate for football not to stop because it's their livelihood. The last time football was suspended, it ended up costing clubs something like £2 billion. So I think people, the EFL, the Premier League, they will do whatever they can to make sure that football is not suspended as long as it is safe. The safety of players, people who work at clubs, supporters as well, that is paramount. But if a game can be played, then it will be played. And I think it's important. Look at these games that have been postponed this weekend. The Premier League, hats off to them. They are giving us information about why they are being postponed. So, for instance, Southampton versus Brentford is being postponed because there's an issue at Brentford. There's no issue at Southampton. Watford versus Palace is being postponed because there's an issue at Watford. No issue at Palace as far as we're aware. West Ham versus Norwich. There's a problem at Norwich, not at West Ham. Everton versus Leicester. There's a problem at Leicester, not Everton. Everton are at Stamford Bridge this evening, a few miles away from here, preparing to play against Chelsea. So I think we have to keep things in perspective and we have to trust the Premier League and the EFL to make the right decisions. And at the moment, that is what they're doing. When they are presented with evidence and facts that people's safety are at risk or there are not enough players for a club to fulfil their fixtures or clubs cannot prepare properly for a fixture because their training ground is closed, then they are postponing the games. But the last thing anybody wants is for football to be suspended again.
Yeah, OK, but I mean, this is significant disruption to one match day. Half of it is gone. 5 games off, 5 games at this point remain. But as we said, it's a fluid situation. But I guess, every cloud has a silver lining. I guess in this case, the fact that we have been here before. What about the fact that clubs are better prepared, having had this experience over the last 18 months, to deal with things like this, can't they?
Exactly. I mean, the major difference is obviously the vaccine is available. Last time around, people didn't have the vaccine. People didn't have access to tests in the same way as we have access to tests now, even though there's a real shortage of lateral flow tests at the moment. The whole structure is in place. If you go to training grounds, for instance, Premier League training grounds, they've got COVID testing centres on site. They know how to do this. They've been through this before. Look, we want to see football continue. We want fans to be able to go to games as well. I would just be a little bit careful. Let's not speculate. Let's not whip up hysteria. Let's not talk football into a situation where it feels like it has to shut down. I think we should put our faith in the Premier League and the EFL. Lots of lessons have been learned. There's been lots of progress, as you say, since the last lockdown, and we do have the vaccine and we have the booster as well. And there have been lots of advances in medical science and with testing as well. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it won't be as bad and as serious as it was last time. But let's keep things into perspective as well. We're just talking about a game. At the end of the day, football is just a game. We've got record COVID cases in the United Kingdom again today. If football has to stop, then it has to stop. There's a lot more important things in the world than football. Yeah,
but as far as you're concerned, as you said, the Premier League sticking with their stance, they will try and play every game where they see no issue. But we're responding to this, every minute. So thank you very much for the moment anyway, Kaveh.